The second project is a faux metal finish using multiple layers of embossing powder. If you're a longtime stamper, you might have tried this with a product called ultra thick embossing enamel, which is embossing powder crystals which are formulated to be much thicker, and they build up, and they're meant to build up and make layers. But you can do the same technique with regular embossing powder. For that I'm using the silver metallic finish, not the glitter finish. This is the piece we're making. It's just a chipboard circle, it's plain chipboard, and then it's been embossed multiple times with layers of that silver embossing powder. And on the final molten layer, when it's hot and melted, you take that same rubber stamp we were using before and press it into that final layer, and it will deboss the image into your molten embossing powder. And it gives this fun faux look, like a metal finish. I, of course, never left mine alone. I'm never good enough to leave my projects alone. I went ahead with slate alcohol ink, and I dabbed it over the top to grunge it up and take some of that really pretty silver shine away to make it a more grungy look. But of course, you can leave it in that original silver metal finish, which you can see in a moment. This is how we do it. Started with a chipboard circle, just like this. It's kind of thick. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a chipboard shape you can use for your project. But in order to cover this entire thing with embossing ink and then embossing powder, your fingers would get in the way, and trust me, you do not want your fingers around that heat tool. So I made a little cardboard handle. I just cut a strip of scrap cardstock or chipboard, whatever you have, about 1 by 10 or 12 inches. Measurements aren't really important here. Just cut a long strip, fold it together in the middle, and then fold back the ends like this to make tabs. And this is going to be your handle. I put a little bit of clear tape on the end and simply attach it to the back side of your chipboard piece, securing it with that clear tape. And there's your little handle. So when you do your inking, you can hold on to it and get far away from your heat tool. That way you won't end up burning your fingers. Again, we're going to use that embossing ink. This time, cover your entire chipboard piece, and you'll be able to tell if it's traditional chipboard that's unfinished, it'll change colors, and you can tell it goes from a really whitish gray to a darker brownish gray. Once it's completely covered like that, you want to have your two things ready. You want to have your embossing powder, and this is really helpful to have that little disposable bowl or tray or something ready, because you'll need to do it in multiple layers. So for the first time, once it's wet, cover it completely with your embossing powder. Don't worry if you don't get it perfectly covered, because you'll be doing several layers of it and you can always catch any bald spots later. Okay, cover it like that and move your powders out of the way. Go ahead and use your heat tool again and heat the entire surface till it melts and is shiny. Pretty sure you could see that happen on camera. It melts and it gets all shiny. And you could stop right there. It's actually really cool. Just shiny and silver. It's completely covered with that embossing powder. The first time you did it, you used the embossing ink to get that first layer of powder to go on. But from now on, you're going to use hot, liquid embossing powder to attract more of the dry embossing powder. Again, keep that bowl handy. This is really important. This step you repeat several times. With regular embossing powder, you need to do probably 5 to 6 layers to get it to be thick enough to do the debossing technique with the stamp. If you're using the ultra thick embossing enamel, you usually only need 2 or 3 because those crystals are formulated to be thicker and build up more quickly. But again, you can do it with this regular embossing powder. So you'll need to heat while it's still hot. Quickly dump on more powder, shake it off, and then again repeat that step several times. Here's how it looks. You can see it collected on some of that chipboard piece, but not everything, and that's okay. More layers you do, it'll sort of catch up with itself. And it will move, it becomes fluid, and as you move your heat tool, it will actually move around a little bit on there. Okay. there's the silver medallion. It's got 5 or 6 layers of embossing powder. I kind of lost track. But you know that you're getting close to finished when you add your powders and the whole thing starts to slide and move around. It almost gets like a skin, like the top of old pudding. It moves around and you can tell that that's almost ready to do your embossing or your debossing. Debossing will actually take your stamped image and press it in as opposed to raising it up, which embossing powders did on our tree toppers. So here's the last thing you do. Use that same ink, whichever stamp you choose, using the ink sort of as a release. It works the same way as a spray, a non-stick spray in a baking pan. It's basically just going to help make sure that this stamp will come out of this embossing powder. Here's what you do. Have it inked up and ready to go. Heat it up. As soon as it's heated up, the same way you dumped on your powder, when it is liquid and heated, press your stamp right in it and let it go. You'll need to let it cool in there so that it will fully form its image within that molten embossing powder. And it will release. You'll be able to tell when it lifts out carefully. Watch. I set mine in and now I'm just going to leave it set for a minute to make sure that it's really going to be okay in there. You could see it move actually and flow a little bit when I pressed it in. So it definitely worked. Okay. There, it popped right out. See? No harm done to the stamp, and your image is right there in your molten faux metal finish. Again, this is the silver embossing powder look, as is, straight out of the container. If you want to do any of those distressing techniques like I did on the other coin, you can certainly add alcohol inks because they're formulated to react on silver, shiny surfaces. And this is one. You can see the silver and the distress look. Very different, depends on which you like. I hope you enjoyed these 2 techniques today. If you have any questions about these products, please send us an email at the Scrapbook Express blog. And of course, check out the store for all of the products that I used in today's video. Thanks for watching.